Let me guess. You've taken one of those personality tests online, got labeled as an introvert, and suddenly everything made sense. That's why I hate parties. That's why I need alone time. I'm just wired this way. And now you use it like a shield. Sorry, I can't go to that event. I'm an introvert. I don't do well in groups. Introvert problems. Networking drains me because I'm introverted. Why you're not actually an introvert. The truth about personality types. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You're probably not actually an introvert. You've just been hiding behind a label that sounds scientific to avoid dealing with the real issues. And I'm about to prove it to you. The personality test scam. Let's talk about how you got this label in the first place. You probably took the Myers-Briggs test or some online quiz based on it, right? Answered a bunch of questions about whether you prefer small groups or large crowds, whether you recharge alone or with people. Here's what they don't tell you. The Myers-Briggs type indicator has about as much scientific validity as your horoscope. I'm not exaggerating. Psychologists have been trying to debunk this thing for decades. The test-retest reliability is terrible, meaning if you take it twice a few weeks apart, there's nearly a 50% chance you'll get a different result. Half the time, you're apparently a different person. Why? Because the test forces you into binary categories that don't actually exist in nature. You're either introverted or extroverted, thinking or feeling. It's like asking whether you're either tall or short with no in-between. That's not how humans work. The Big Five personality model, the one actual psychologists use, shows that introversion-extroversion exists on a spectrum. Most people fall somewhere in the middle, what researchers call ambiverts. But I'm an ambivert doesn't have the same ring to it, does it? It doesn't give you that neat little box to climb into. What you're really avoiding. Here's where this gets uncomfortable. When you label yourself an introvert and use it to explain why you avoid social situations, what you're really doing is avoiding something else entirely, social anxiety. That's different from introversion. Actual introverts can enjoy social situations. They just need downtime afterward to recharge. They're not afraid of parties or networking events. They don't get panic attacks before presentations. They just have a limited social battery. But most people who call themselves introverts, they're dealing with anxiety, not energy depletion. You're not avoiding that work happy hour because it drains your energy. You're avoiding it because you're anxious about small talk, worried about saying something awkward, scared of being judged. That's not introversion. That's social anxiety with better branding. And here's why this matters. When you mislabel anxiety as introversion, you stop trying to improve. Introversion sounds fixed, biological, unchangeable, but anxiety, that's treatable. That's something you can actually work on. The comfort zone. Prison. Let's dig deeper. Think about the times you've claimed to be introverted. Were you really energy depleted, or were you just outside your comfort zones? Because here's what I've noticed. People who identify as introverts are mysteriously extroverted when they're around their closest friends. Put them in a room with their inner circle and suddenly they're chatty, energetic, making jokes, fully engaged for hours. But put those same people in a room with strangers or acquaintances and boom. Sorry, I'm an introvert. I need to leave. That's not about energy management. That's about comfort levels. Real introverts feel drained after extended social interaction regardless of who they're with, even their best friends, even their family. The quality of the interaction doesn't matter. It's the quantity that affects them. If you can hang out with your close friends for 6 hours straight without feeling drained, but 30 minutes at a networking event exhausts you, you're not dealing with introversion. You're dealing with discomfort around unfamiliar people. And that's a skill issue, not a personality type. The social skills gap nobody talks about. Here's the really uncomfortable part. What if you're not an introvert? You just never developed strong social skills? Think about it. Social skills are exactly that, skills. They're learned through practice, just like riding a bike or playing guitar. Some people get tons of practice growing up. They have outgoing parents, participate in team sports, go to lots of social events. They accumulate thousands of hours of practice navigating conversations, reading social cues, managing group dynamics. Other people don't get that practice. Maybe they were shy as kids and it never got addressed. Maybe they spent more time online than in person during crucial developmental years. Maybe they had limited social opportunities. Either way, they hit adulthood without the same skill level. And social situations feel exhausting because they're constantly operating outside their competence zone. Every interaction requires intense focus and mental effort because the skills aren't automatic yet. That exhaustion isn't about being introverted, it's the same exhaustion you'd feel trying to have a conversation in a language you barely speak. It's cognitive load from doing something you're not good at yet. But I'm not good at social skills sounds fixable and kind of embarrassing. I'm an introvert sounds permanent and respectable. So, which label are people going to choose? The internet made this worse. Let's be honest about something else. The rise of introvert culture online has made this problem exponentially worse. There are entire communities now dedicated to celebrating introversion, memes about canceling plans, posts about how introverts are deep thinkers while extroverts are shallow, content that frames social avoidance as self-care and wisdom. This stuff feels validating. It feels like you've found your tribe, but it's also creating an echo chamber that reinforces behaviors that might actually be limiting your life. Because here's the thing, humans are social creatures. That's not an opinion, it's evolutionary biology. Our brains literally developed the way they did because of social cooperation. Study after study shows that social connection is one of the strongest predictors of happiness, health, and longevity. When you consistently avoid social situations and tell yourself it's just because you're introverted, you're potentially cutting yourself off from one of the most important sources of human well-being. I'm not saying you need to become a social butterfly, but if your introversion is preventing you from forming connections, building a network, or experiencing opportunities, that's a problem, not a personality type. The cultural shift that changed everything. Here's something fascinating. Rates of self-identified introversion have skyrocketed in the last 15 years. According to various surveys, the number of people who consider themselves introverts has roughly doubled since the early 2010s. Did human genetics suddenly change? Did evolution kick into overdrive? Of course not. What changed was culture. Social media trained us to interact through screens. The pandemic normalized isolation. Remote work removed forced social practice. And suddenly, in-person interaction started feeling harder, more draining, more overwhelming. People interpreted that difficulty as discovering their true introverted nature. But what actually happened is they got out of practice. Social skills atrophied from lack of use. It's like if you stopped exercising for 2 years and then tried to run a mile, you'd be exhausted. But that doesn't mean you're not a runner by nature. It means you're out of shape. Same principle applies here. The real test. What are you actually afraid of? Want to know if you're truly introverted or just avoiding discomfort? Ask yourself these questions. Do you avoid social situations even when you know they'd benefit you professionally or personally? That's avoidance, not introversion. Do you feel relieved when plans get canceled? That might be anxiety, not energy preference. Do you struggle with small talk specifically, but can talk for hours about topics you're passionate about? That's a skill gap, not an energy issue. Do you wish you were better at socializing, but tell yourself you can't because you're introverted? That's a limiting belief, not a personality trait. Actual introverts don't wish they were different. They're genuinely content with their social patterns. They're not avoiding situations out of fear. They're making intentional choices about how to spend their energy. If you're using introversion as an excuse rather than a preference, you need to be honest with yourself about what's really going on. The path forward, integration, not identity. Look, maybe you do lean more introverted than extroverted. That's totally fine. About 30-50% of people genuinely do. But here's what you need to understand. Personality traits are tendencies, not destinies. They describe your natural inclinations, not your limitations. Yes, socializing might require more energy for you than for others, but that doesn't mean you can't develop the skills to make it easier. It doesn't mean you should avoid all social challenges. It doesn't mean you can't expand your comfort zone. The most successful introverts I know have strong social skills. They've learned to network effectively, give compelling presentations, navigate social events with confidence. They still need recovery time afterward, but they don't use their personality type as a reason to avoid growth. They understand something crucial. You can honor your natural tendencies while still pushing your boundaries. Stop hiding behind labels. Here's my challenge to you. For the next month, stop using "I'm an introvert" as an explanation for avoiding things. Instead, get specific. I feel anxious about this event. I'm not confident in my small talk skills. I'm worried I won't know anyone there. Those are real, addressable concerns. Those point you toward solutions. Those give you something to work on. Because the truth is, personality labels should describe you, not define you. They should help you understand yourself, not limit yourself. You're not just an introvert. You're a complex human with fears, skills, experiences, and potential that can't be reduced to a 4-letter code. So stop hiding behind the label. Start being honest about what you're really dealing with, and then do something about it. Your future self will thank you.